Okay, welcome everyone to today's meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order this February 14th, 2022. I'd like to acknowledge that the offices of the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union are located on the traditional territory, the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, I've received regrets from Director Phillips. But in addition, unfortunately, Director May and Director McCarthy aren't able to be here today, but I have not received any regrets from them. Moving forward, do we have can we have a motion that the board of directors adopt the agenda as presented with the amendment to table the direct inspection committee BMD2C final report to next meeting? So motion by Director Vale, seconded by.
Well, actually, I'm gonna maybe make an amendment just so we can
Okay.
get things done. And I'm thinking, why don't we move up let's put the finance monitoring report up near the top, because I think that's a pressing one.
Okay.
Let's see, what are the more pressing things we need to try and get done before we lose current
Directors.
Victoria and
It really is just the monitoring reports and
then we can just try and get like the
minutes.
the consent, all that stuff we can just go through quickly.
Exactly, precisely. So Ian, I do see that you have your hand up. Would you like to offer some suggestions?
I'd just like to caution the board against rushing this. If you can't do and complete this agenda with due consideration, then I would caution you not to try and do something that is going to be rushed. You need to do your due diligence, and if you're changing the voting method from a strategy that you've just implemented a couple meetings ago, it just doesn't reflect well on board practices. So if the business of the board can't reasonably be conducted, just be honest about that and make that call. Better to cancel a meeting and not have it than to do it poorly.
Yeah, no, and I agree. My thing is we put more of the stuff where there's going to be more, where there's decisions to be made in the beginning, and stuff like the CRO or CGO, like the updates and comments can kind of come after, because those there's no emotions attached. That's all. So then those, because those can always come later, but if we lose quorum, it's not really an issue.
But I think with that note, the financial modeling reports are already the first item on the agenda anyways, so right after conflict of interests. So I think with that, does that sufficiently,
do you want like ownership linkage to come right after that?
If the ownership linkage committee has to be tabled to next meeting,
we can wait.
It's not the end of the world.
Okay, let's do that then. Let's just keep it.
And we can table certain in-camera session items too as well when we enter in cameras. So that's that for the record, everyone. So with that, so remember, so we have the mover for Director Vale for the motion to adopt the agenda as presented with the specified amendment to table the DIC final report to next meeting, and then seconded by Director Shandok. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Would you like to speak? No. As I see none, do we have any oppositions? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, next, moving on. Do we have any conflict of interest to declare today? As I see none, we can move on to the adoption of the consent agenda. So can I have a motion the board of directors adopt the consent agenda as presented, which contains the monitoring reports EL2D, 2E, 2F, and 2N, as well as the monitoring reports GP2F and 2G. Yes, Director Vale, would you like to move?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull EL2D, like the finance one here. Give me a sec. I believe N was a separate one. So let me just...
N was a separate one, correct? Yes.
So I'm gonna actually I'm just gonna get the right policy reference. Sorry. I want to pull 2E, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Would you like to tell the board why?
Yeah, no, we deal with it right after, I believe. So we deal with the rest of the items in the consent agenda.
I see. Perfect. Okay, so motion that the board adopt the agenda consent agenda as presented with the amendment to remove, that would be EL2N, correct?
No, it wasn't,
Or-
N
oh,
is
sorry.
the.
Sorry, did you say 2D?
2E, I believe it was.
Sorry,
if
2E,
I'm
my
not
apologies.
mistaken.
Okay, so amendment to remove 2E, thank you.
Yeah.
So motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, any oppositions? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we can go on to the adoption of the minutes. This would be,
Oh, no, I thought we were
sorry.
gonna deal with the.
oh, sorry, my apologies. So, I guess we can have the floor in terms of discussion of the monitoring reports, whether or not the board wants to approve them or not. So I guess the best practice is yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, so my issue with 2E, and I am a bit sort of frustrated here, a couple items. Because this is the very same situation that arose, previously, it's again non-compliant. And the delay that's being cited here is the pandemic. And also it's referring to September. So a couple concerns. I'm concerned, were the report, like, was this when read over thoroughly when it was, being before it was submitted to the board, I guess, because I mean, I see September here, and then also we don't have the report, the quarterly report from December.
Mhm. Okay. Were there any other concerns that you had about it? Or was it just specifically the timing
Just
of the quarterly reports?
just the non-compliant section for 2E,
I see.
but we already approved everything else.
I see. Okay, so is it, I guess this would be question towards PJ. Is it possible to fix that error and then bring it back to the board?
Yeah, of course. I apologize. I guess that must have slipped. I'll just give that a look and I can send it back by tomorrow, if that's okay.
And then what about the provision of the quarterly report?
I will give that all a look over and I'll connect with Ian and Phil and bring that back to the board.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
So here's my thinking. I'm just calling something the finance committee. We obviously need to report back by the 28th in order to maintain compliance with policy manual. I'm thinking maybe we table this particular section to the 28th. What do you think, Chair Dang and Director Del Giudice as members of the committee? I just don't want to approve it without, seeing, because I don't think that's good governance practice, but at the same time, I don't want to hold up our committee here. So
Yeah.
I think maybe we can consider, if the president gets us the information, we can consider that in the context of our committee's report and assessment, but then it'll have to come to approval for the board on the 28th. I think if that's good with both of you.
I am okay with that. What do you think? Do you have any other thoughts on that, Director Del Giudice?
Actually, I guess if you can talk.
I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay, so I'll make a motion then that we defer the 2E to the meeting on the 28th of February.
But before we do, just want to have a quick comment on the chat from our Executive Director Champagne. Quarterly report as a part of 2E. So
Yes.
yeah, okay, so we can confirm that. So you want to make a motion to the board of directors?
Yeah, so I think we defer approving that so that it can be fixed up. Just correct the wording to December,
Okay,
because
so
that's when that last one should have been like that. This one should have been sort of like the period it would cover, and then just rectifying the non-compliance issue here so that we can are compliant.
mhm. Yes, and that also still gives the ability for the finance committee to review.
Yeah,
all
and
other
that's
policies.
so I think that's sort of reasonable. Yeah, so Shane or Director Simmons, yes, so we already approved. So I left all the other sections in the monitoring report because I don't want to hold up the committee, and my thinking is for the committee, we'll just work with, the president can send us the updated one tomorrow or in a day or two, and with that, and then we'll take that into account when we do our report, but then the actual approval of the, this will happen at the 28th meeting in theory, and then in tandem with the report. So I think it'll work out. We can still meet our timelines.
I don't think that's a problem for the board to have this delay, especially to do our due diligence and reviewing the governance and executive limitations. So I guess to just formalize what you said, so you want to motion that the board of directors defer approval of the monitoring report for EL2E to next meeting pending the mistakes as specified will be resolved.
Yeah, or satisfactory information and corrections made.
Perfect. Okay,
As
so we have
discussed.
a mover. Okay, Director Vale. We have a seconder, Director Symington. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, do we have any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so now we can move over to our next agenda item, which is the adoption of the minutes. So we do have quite a many bit of minutes that were backlogged that are going to require approval from the board. So it will be for the minutes from August 26th, August 6th, sorry, October 6th, October 18th, October 20th, November 3rd, November 8th, November 12th, November 17th, and December 1st. So can I get a motion by the board to drop the minutes of the aforementioned dates as presented? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Symington. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, and I believe, I don't know if you received my email there, Chair Dang. There was quite a list of, and I can share my screen if the board wants to see it.
Yeah, just for record, I did receive the email, and the share screen function has now been allowed, so you can
Okay.
share that screens of the concerns that you may have with the meetings to the board and our secretary.
Yeah, and it's not, I'm not being nitpicky. It's just really, I mean, these are official records. So in essence, the meeting of the 26th, if I recall, like some of these I can't recall off the top of my head. So that, but I believe Vice Chair Sneedy was chairing this meeting, so it just needs to be noted in that. I mean, as Chair Dang was seconding one of the motions in there. The other big thing, and I kind of made comments through it, is the vote count. So when individuals are absent, so there was two of them were sets of minutes, and probably others, I can't remember off the top of my head, where say a certain director dropped off the call for whatever reason for that motion, but they were still counted in the vote total as having, I believe, was opposed or abstained, if I recall, which it should not have been the case. So just those sort of corrections, and then just some sort of language kind of cleanups, like DIC or changing it to DIC rather than IC, and really just in like voting period or rolling period to voting period, et cetera, just to ensure that, and really all I care about, frankly, is the motions, because again, those are really what are going to form the basis potentially for CRA, legal proceedings, et cetera.
Okay.
If that makes sense to folks.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Vale regarding some of the amendments or comments that he's recommending the board to, I guess, undertake for the minutes? If not, then I guess then in that case, we can have, amend the motion since you're the mover. So if you like to retract your mover, then we can go in, or.
Yeah, we didn't really, no motion was really, I mean, you can't really put a motion. So I guess I'll make the motion that the minutes be the minutes of, and I'm not gonna read out all the names.
Aforementioned dates.
Yeah, as amended in accordance with the comments that I provided to the chair.
So yeah, so comments provided by Director Vale in this case. So do we have a mover? Say Director Vale, a seconder, Director Symington. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on this matter? As I see none, do we have any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, So I'll send that off to our board secretary, and that comes now to the next agenda item, which is the comments from the chair of the board and CGO. So I do have a couple comments to make. One actually does relate to the adoption of minutes, so I just want to inform the board that. So I did take a look. So I spent the past 2 weeks really doing a thorough kind of a cleanup of past chair documents and trying to upload them onto the Teams. And I discovered that there was actually a special format that old minutes used to provide, where the chair of the board and the vice chair provide their signatures at the bottom of minutes to actually specify that this is now a legal document. So I'm going to be bringing that up to the governance practice committee to see if we can get that changed if necessary. But I just thought that I would let everyone know that that might be a change that are coming to the minutes. Just trying to figure out what the specific format is, if the board is okay with what my predecessors have done, as well as just informing that we have on behalf of myself, as well as the great work that has been done by Ian and Phil to help really move everything online to Teams. I think that so far has been a really great success in terms of the ease of use and efficiency of the new system. The second comment I want to make is so in terms of live streaming updates, myself, Director Vale, met up with Megan with consultation with the president and the executive director to determine what the best way to implement that would be. So we are going to go ahead with just purchasing a Zoom license that will not be affiliated directly with the university, just be solely owned and operated by the chair of the board or this the students union to facilitate the live streaming directly to YouTube. So we have conversation with that, and we're just working on what the best practices are for that, since this is not a official university sanctioned email. What the best security ways to go forth with that would be, as you know, the email would have to then be passed on from board to board. Finally, I do see hands up. I guess I can answer some questions first before I move on to the next item.
Sorry, Chair, I thought we had moved comments till after the end. I'm just cognizant of Director Bothwell's comment in the chat. Like, do we want to?
Sorry, yes.
Do you think we have time to do maybe the ownership linkage, get that piece carried out, or do we want to defer that, or before we lose?
I would prefer that we defer the ownership linkage committee, since we don't have the full board here, and
yeah.
I think that there's some members of the board who would probably be very beneficial in the committee to would be there. So yeah. Yes, Director Bothwell.
Yeah, so with the Zoom license, you mentioned that it's just YouTube, or is it gonna have like Instagram and Facebook like we discussed prior?
So we actually had a conversation with marketing, and the easiest thing to do is just simply to still use Instagram and Facebook, but just as a means to promote that, hey, you can find the link here, or we just link the actual like live stream, because we're trying to do like a YouTube live stream with the comment section there, and that from their point of view makes it a bit easier, because as the quote was said, that like Facebook is a dying platform and Instagram would be a bit difficult to implement, and they just want to keep everything clean. And so far the your students union YouTube channel is actually being underutilized, so they think that this would be a good opportunity to like basically almost have it as like all of our footage there, as well as potentially some archival footage too as well. Some like highlights of
I do think that's an interesting thought, because I would argue like YouTube is the dying thing. People are using TikTok and Instagram to watch their live videos. No one's going out of their way to watch a YouTube video. I just thought I should bring that up though, because in the summer it was agreed that we would try to use Instagram, because that's where everyone is viewing their footage. So I just think like our understanding going into the usage of the Zoom license was that we'd be able to utilize Instagram and TikTok lives. It wasn't focused on YouTube. So I have very low energy tonight, but I do think that needs to be brought up, because that was what we discussed before. We didn't discuss YouTube.
No, that's a very fair point. And so I just made a note of it, that we will look into making sure that we can see what if it's possible to implement that onto Instagram too as well. Director Vale.
Yeah, no, just in response to Director Bothwell's comment, and perhaps, and I don't want to speak for Chair Dang, but I think that's something him and I can maybe look at. I can certainly, I believe there may be there's a way. It's not going to be as simple as a click of a button on the Zoom, but there's a bit of a background work you can do on the Zoom streaming side to potentially set it up, and then we can look into the time limitations, et cetera. Like if we can stream a full hour meeting along, for instance, on the board Instagram account. So we can always, I think, look into that and try it out even, I think, maybe potentially, and just see how effective it would be. But I think the intent is the YouTube tends to be a lot more stable because in terms of like long term, it also provides more of a sort of a centralized hub that can be repository for the recordings as well.
Hopefully that addresses some of your concerns, Director Bothwell. I do want to make it clear that, like, I appreciate your point, and I do want to make sure that we can get that there as as the wishes of the board for this implementation. Okay, but if there's no other further questions, we can move on to my final comment, which is that so with the election kind of finally wrapping up with just the final bits of work in terms of finalization of processing of the reimbursements, as well as the giveaways for the Laurie Votes prize winners. I do want to stress that our CRO has done really quite an amazing job today. And throughout this election, and I think that on behalf of the board that we should really congratulate her for a really hard election. I know it was tough on everyone's end, and I think that with kind of like the bouncing around between the in-person as well, the possibility of working in person to everything moving online, she's really been resilient and adaptive into this situation. So so I want to inform our CRO, who is here tonight in the gallery, that the board of directors has actually drafted up a thank you letter expressing its sincere gratitude for helping run the elections, and that's that it would formally be presented to you at this meeting here via email. So we just want to say that, and we really appreciate your efforts, and that's without your help, we could not have made it to the for over 14% quorum that we had reached. So thank you so much. That's the end of my comments today. So I thought we had a little bit of a nice touching note, especially with today being Valentine's. So if there is no other further questions, so I do see your hand, Director Vale.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a motion. Let me just pull it up here. Got to find the letter here. One sec. Okay. So whereas the board wishes to express its gratitude and thanks to the Chief Returning Officer for her efforts in conducting a very successful election, therefore be it resolved that the board direct the Chair of the Board and Chief Governance Officer to send a letter on behalf of the board to formally thank the Chief Returning Officer.
So we have, I guess, a motion on the table now. Do we have a mover? Or do we not need to have a formal motion for that?
I moved it.
We moved it. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Perfect. Do we have any, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Then the motion passes unanimously. So again, congratulations, Carney. And we'll be sending you the letter momentarily after the meeting is done. So thank you again. Now we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the comments from the President and CEO. So I'll pass it off to PJ now.
Hi, so I guess presidential updates, Mental Health Month, which will be in March, is going really well. We have our programming department organizing a lot. Each department's kind of been tasked with putting together something for within their own committees. And then we've also been reaching out to stakeholders like wellness education, soon to meet with athletics and other campus partners to see how we can engage those groups as well. So looking forward to that. Further, we've had mental health presentations going on for second year classrooms, just focusing on wellness education resources, our own mental health resources, as well as resources provided by Sarah Scanlon's offices. So that's been shared with many second year classrooms, but we hope to have those done by the end of the term. And then moving on to university affairs updates, we've signed up, we have registered for General Assembly, which will be taking place exactly a month from now, working on policy papers, and then overseeing local advocacy week. We've had a few city councilors and other stakeholders engaged. So that week will be March 20th week. Apologies, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but I'll share that as it comes along. So that's
first.
Tentatively. That will be coming out soon. I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me now. And that's all I have for now. So.
Okay, thank you, President Law. Does anyone have any questions for President today? As I see none, then we can pass it forward and thank her for her time, and then move on to our Executive Director, Champagne.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to update beyond what's already been submitted, but there are 3 things that I would like to point out. The first and foremost thing is the governance training. Looking to hopefully sit down with Andrew and whomever else needs to be a part of that to schedule something, hopefully the week of March 7th, so that we can get that group going, and then hopefully figure out a way to get chair and potentially vice chair training going where needed. The second thing is obviously with the province's announcement that COVID is for all intents and purposes over as of March 1st. Trying to kind of go through all of the clarifying details that the province released with the university, so that we can, the biggest impact will be largely on in-person events, and what that looks like largely for clubs and associations and committees and things of that nature. So we anticipate to have quite a few conversations with the Pandemic Recovery Group and SHRM as well, which is the risk management folks of the university who have been holding up stuff. So trying to get a lot of clarification so that when we come back outside of reading week, we have more answers than questions for students, because I'm sure they're chomping at the bit to actually do stuff, and I can't say that I blame them. And then the third thing that I'd like to point out, I kind of lightly emphasized it lightly pointed it out in the written updates, but our director of Brantford operations has resigned, and his last day was effective this past Friday. He started officially today with a new company called Modern Campus, which is the parent company for a company called Presence, which is our clubs management software folks. So they definitely poached him from us, but we wish him nothing but the best. We do have a short-term support plan for the Brantford office and the student leadership to make sure that there are no gaps in what happens in the Brantford operations, while we take a look and try to realign and see what the future of Brantford operations looks like, recognizing that being able to replace Tony's political capital on that campus will be very difficult, as he has been a staff member on that campus for 11 years, but also did his undergrad there for another 4. So that's 15 years of experience that's simply not going to be replaced by anybody. So how do we do that? And so we're going to take our time to make sure that we try to do that correctly. So stay tuned, but those are the 3 big things I'd like to focus on.
Okay, thank you for those updates. Does anyone have any question for Executive Director and COO today? Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, and maybe it's still a bit or a little bit early here, and I know I've asked this probably going to go back to maybe May, June, so quite a while back. But I from a strategic lens, should we, and maybe it might have to, it'll certainly straddle over, other boards, but do we need to start looking about what a student union, is going to look like on the Milton campus, like that piece as well, just given the fact that, 2024, we're already going to be having students on the campus?
So we have a pretty thorough multi-campus framework document already done up from when we went to the current standby. And ultimately, where Milton is concerned, we will kind of identify and fill in those gaps as they come. Our expectation is that the Milton campus will grow fairly exponentially and quickly. So yeah, we definitely have an eye on that when we're thinking about what the Brantford presence looks like. But I don't necessarily think that the Brantford staff position has anything in particular to do with the Milton campus as of right now.
Okay, hope that answers your question, Director Vale. Do we have any other questions for Executive Director today? If not, then we can thank him for his time and then move on to our next item. So we decide that for the sake of quorum issue, this means that the committee elections for the ownership linkage will be tabled to next meeting, so we can move on to our in-camera session. So can I have a motion that the board of directors go in camera with the president, executive director, our director of research, advocacy, policy, and our board secretary? Motion by Director Vale, seconded
Yeah, I was just
by-
gonna say, maybe we add Taylor, just keep it one motion here.
Yep.
That we also add in this motion to defer the ownership linkage agenda item to
Yeah.
next meeting, just so
Um,
we capture that somewhere.
Yeah, as well as the deference of the ownership linkage committee elections to the next following regular meeting. So we have a motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? So I see none. Any oppositions? Any abstentions? As I see none, motion passes unanimously. So we will be now moving on to teams for the in-camera session. So for all members in the gallery, I'd like to thank you for your time today and wish you all a wonderful rest of your night.